That was stupid of me. Oh well. I'm gonna try again though. Because it's early. I'm tired. I get a pass. There we go. All right, that's what everyone came for. All the people who watch this. I was kind of scrolling through Substack this morning. It was really nice just seeing a lot of people talking about writing for 15 people or whatever, or producing whatever Substack is for 15 people. Yeah, it's kind of nice just having like thousands of people retweet people talking about that. It's kind of ironic, kind of fun. But yeah, I was thinking about the last video that I made, and how I just really enjoyed it, and it gave me a lot back. And so I kind of wanted to keep the momentum going and make another one. So this is another topic that I've sort of had in the vault that I've been wanting to go on a spiel about. So that's what I'm gonna go on a spiel about for about 8 minutes and see what comes forward. And it might be something that I revisit. Probably it's a big part of my life, but I feel like I need to kind of lay some foundation of thought for talking about it more here. And that topic is design. So I recently chatted with a friend, peer, etc., and we both shared that we kind of came from design parents. So grew up with our parents working in design. I work in design now, and I don't think it was ever something that I would have pursued as a career. I think I had a very classic case of, well, if my parents do that, I can't do that thing. And then, pursued the path that I went down that was different, and kind of found myself back. Well, not back maybe, but like kind of found myself going down the path of being that was very hot. Kind of fun. Being in a design field. It looks different than what I grew up around, a lot different than what I grew up around. But I work in a design field, and I have in some capacity for my career, for like 10 years in my career. So yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting experience of having something mean something growing up, and then I didn't go into my career path thinking I wanted to become a designer or even work in design. It sort of just happened. So the experience of having it mean one thing growing up and kind of having a reaction against it for different reasons, and then finding myself in a similar position. I think I've heard people say that regardless of what, I think this is true for a lot of fields, but regardless of what application you're talking about, design is design. And I think that that's true for a lot of fields. I'm thinking about my partner is an engineer, and his type of engineering and the way that he works as an engineer is very different from a lot of other applications of being an engineer. But at the end of the day, like, being that job or being that function is inherently the same. It's the discipline or the application of it. But it's just interesting because my understanding of design was very aesthetically oriented and aesthetically driven. And I now work in UX, web design, and a lot of that can be driven by just raw aesthetics, I guess, how something looks. But I think there's also a big part about how it works and feels that's important, that is kind of almost feels more challenging. Although the how it feels part is very much aesthetically driven, but the how it works, oh, that's the air conditioner. The how it works is different. I don't think you can necessarily. I worked with a designer who was incredible, who I was thinking about a lot today, actually, kind of coming back into making this video. And she used to like love talking about putting lipstick on a pig. She was like, I can only put so much lipstick on a pig when, like, trying to make something that doesn't really function right or feel right, making it look pretty. There's only so much that making something look good that isn't actually functionally right is going to do. So I grew up around interior design. That was what my dad did. That's how my parents met. And my dad ran a design studio, so I was kind of in his office and saw some of his client work. And I think there's something interesting about the putting lipstick on a pig that applies to houses and buildings. If it's not laid out right, or if it's not, there's only so much that you can do with something that doesn't have good bones or doesn't have the right structure behind it. No amount of a paint color, no amount of the right furniture, the right, finishings are going to change if something doesn't feel right. And so I think there is a lot of wisdom to kind of like the whole picture of what makes something really compelling and beautiful versus something that is just off. When you think of a building, there's a lot of pressure to get it right, because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you go into a house or you pass a house and it feels sad or feels wrong or something like that, and you're just kind of like, I don't know, it's a lot to fix something or to make something, to re-engineer engineering, but like, yeah, to completely re-engineer, redo something to make it work for people is a huge undertaking. I think when you think about like urban design now too, there's so much undoing that's really necessary to make urban spaces work for people again. In a chat at work, we were talking about, I was talking about moss because I've just been seeing a lot within urban design and urban spaces and whatnot about like the power of moss, that like what moss can do for carbon dioxide, moss roofs and all these things. And it's like, that's just one piece of making urban spaces work for people again. And when you see these kind of like reclamation projects, they're so compelling, but as a person, you have to really be willing to rethink your idea of beauty and what makes something beautiful. I have a minute, and I probably won't follow up with the examples that I put in these. Like the last video, I said I was gonna add my screenshot. I haven't done that. Maybe I will. But I recently saw this picture of Seattle and how Seattle basically closed down a highway and reclaimed it for pedestrian use and created like a pedestrian waterfront. And I'm just imagining what it must be like to walk through there, because anytime you have something that was a highway that gets converted, I mean, there's still a ton of concrete there in that place, and there is like the experience of going through it must feel sort of disjointed, and so you have to kind of embrace this feeling of beauty being disjointed, which feels counterintuitive to kind of like what we know. And I'm sure there are ways to make it not feel disjointed and make it feel very cohesive, but it seems like also this pursuit of absolute perfection would mean that we never actually accomplish those projects. We never actually realize them, because some of it is a lot of like jigsaw with raw edges, that is not going to be perfectly, that is not going to come together coherently. I mean, I think of another thing is the High Line. And the High Line is incredible. How many resources? I mean, New York City is one of the most like resource rich places on the planet, I would assume. So yeah, putting together the High Line is not saying that Seattle doesn't, and I've never actually even been to that site, so I'm sure it's beautiful and wonderful. But if every place was trying to achieve an accomplishment, like a stunning, incredible accomplishment with very few resources, no changes would happen. So there has to be some sort of like middle ground. And it's interesting thinking of like what I mentioned earlier, where you go into a house and if it feels off or whatever, you're kind of like, man, this is such a shame. But then at the same time, does that mean we just don't do anything until it's perfect? And an extension of that, I think, is for some reason I feel like I need to mention Paris. So Paris created this whole, basically just shut down a ton of roads and reclaimed them for pedestrian use. And it's done massive things to cut down their carbon footprint. And I can find the map that shows what were used to be car friendly streets and are now pedestrian, like reclaimed pedestrian spaces, and what it's done for its CO2. Again, another example that I hope I had, but I don't know when I'll do that. And part of that is like you have to piss people off, and there's an element of there's this concept of social engineering that makes me feel very uncomfortable, because I don't like the idea of people in power knowingly upsetting a lot of people and just being like, it's for the greater good. I think that's very trolley theory, where it's like, well, we're going to kill a bunch of people, but it's going to be for the best because we know, because there's like a righteousness and a power thing to that I think is kind of gross. That being said, for something like shutting down a bunch of roads and making them pedestrian streets for a city, and, you know, a city that's designed to be walkable in the first place, I think, sure, that could be an example maybe of social engineering where it just is done, but is probably for the best. And yeah, it's interesting. In the United States, I don't think we have structures as much where that could just be like decided and enacted. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it's interesting. Like the American experiment is kind of interesting compared to other places. And now I think it's going to get too political, the things I'm going to mention or want to go down. And I don't really want to talk about like socialism and democracy when I meant to be talking about design, which, yeah, the rabbit hole. Yeah. It is very interesting, like all of the manifestations that design can take and what it can mean and where it can be applied and all these things. And so one of the big things that I talked about with this friend of mine the other day is being someone who doesn't like to like pick a lane. And I think there are plenty of lanes and specializations within design that a person can go down. There's also, it is a good field for people who like to be generalists, because there's so many different applications and there's so many different ways to specialize or, you know, develop your skill set. So yeah, it's a good place if you like to think deeply and broadly. Yeah, both deeply and broadly. I feel like it's a good field. And I think that's all I have to say about this for today. I've gone past my time. That's my time. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this for today. And I will probably revisit this topic again here. So if you're watching this, I hope you have a great day, or I hope you've had a great day. And thank you for watching. It means a lot to me that anybody would be interested in this little slice of place that I've been niching out for myself. So thank you.